Hello and welcome. I'm so happy you joined me today. Today I want to talk about induction burners, why you might want to use one, and how you might want to go about selecting one that's going to work best for you. Now, there are many different kinds of these on the market. This is rather garden variety, but this is actually my second induction burner. And the key I found that really made the first one not work for me is it didn't have very many settings as to how hot or cool the burner actually was. This one here, which is a new wave, and it's very light. The main thing about induction burners is they work by a magnetic field that excites the molecules in ferrous materials, meaning steel or iron. So in order for them to work, you have to have compatible cookware. So that means no aluminum pots, which you really shouldn't have anyway because they're bad for you. Which also means probably no non-stick cookware that isn't really non-stick and always fails really quickly in my experience. And then you wind up eating PTFE in your food. You don't want to do that. You really don't. Now, a lot of people would really love to have, a nice gas range, like we see over here. This is a classic O'Keefe and Merritt 6-burner 2 oven, and it's a really beautiful, beautiful range. But gas is just about as antique as that thing, if not actually more so. Remember gaslight before we had electricity? There are a lot of downsides to using gas. As an architect, when I was in school in the 90s, we were taught that gas was the most energy efficient option, and in some ways it was back then, but there were a lot of downsides that we weren't even thinking about back then. For one, we didn't have the huge amount of solar, wind, and other renewable energy that we do today. Even though we had a lot of hydropower back then, we did not have induction burners. And these things are 40% more efficient than a regular conventional electric cooktop. And they also are quite a bit faster than gas. They get hotter than gas, and they're just a joy to use because your pan gets up to temperature quickly. In hot summer-like conditions like this, it's not creating heat of its own, it's just making the pan hot. So there's no blow-by heat emanating from the cooking top itself. It's only heating up the pan. In this case, you can tell very clearly that there's sort of a toroidal area, like here, that it's heating up. So it'll heat up this kind of circle all the way around, from here out to here, and which is why when you're using it, you want to make sure that you, if you're using cast iron, like I love to use, you want to heat it up slowly. So this is a nice chicken fryer 3-quart Dutch oven, and it's already been kind of ruined from using an old style electric cooktop and gave it a nice little bump on the bottom because it got too hot in one spot. So I'll have to fix that eventually, but if you slowly heat it up and start on a lower setting, you should be fine. Just don't turn it on high, full blast at first. If you're unfamiliar with using this kind of cooktop and you go straight into cooking things on high, you're going to start to burn a lot of food, and you don't want to do that. So give yourself time to work it out. Another option is one of my favorites. This is heavy gauge stainless steel laminated cookware. So it's stainless steel on 2 sides with a layer of aluminum on the inside that provides even cooking. And that's kind of ideal for something like this. That's not a super high-end, Fisher Paykel or Gaggenau or Miele item that will probably alleviate some of those issues because they have all kinds of fancy stuff to put on it. But you know, this is talking about spending $100 for a burner as opposed to $1,000 or $3,000 for a full cooktop. Another thing to be aware when you're trying to find the right one for you is I look for one that has a display in both Celsius or Fahrenheit because I tend to want to use either one depending on what I'm using. I'm a big fan of the metric system, and I really hate the fact that most Americans don't know how to use the metric system and don't use it. It's just a pet peeve. Aside from that, another thing to watch out for is, so this has 3 main controls for heat settings, from sear to low, but it has plus and minus buttons, so you actually effectively get about, I think it's 10 different temperature settings. I find if you have like 10 to 12, that's probably enough. And even though it gives you a readout for the temperature, that readout is not accurate. It's a little bit hotter, I find, and that's just from verifying it with our always essential infrared thermometer. Another nice thing about this one is it's actually circle based and not a full rectangle. Some of them have these big corners that stick out, which is kind of an eyesore to me, and is just more space that it takes up that you don't need it to take up. Never use one of these things on a steel countertop like this. I had this experience once where the first time I had one of these, there was a stainless steel counter kitchen, and if you put this on one of these things, it will start to create electricity in the countertop and shock you. So it always must be used on a non-conductive or non-ferrous surface. That magnetic charge extends all the way around, and if it goes into your countertop, you're going to be unhappy. I don't want you to go to hospital. I would strongly recommend getting one of these, especially for days like today when you don't want to have to use a full-on range. This is a much smaller thing, it doesn't get as hot, and it's also not creating all of the toxic vapors that burning fossil fuel inside your house creates. It's very bad for your indoor air quality. It's bad for your health. If you have asthma or children or asthmatic children, it's really something you don't want to have to do. Gas had a great marketing campaign, now you're cooking with gas, and for a long time it seemed great because electric cooktops at the time were pretty horrible. They're just resistance based, and now we have something better. So do your own due diligence when searching, of course. Check all the reviews, make sure you're not getting a bad unit, but also make sure that if you are searching for an induction burner, it's going to have all the features you need. One of the things I like about this one also is it has, if you're on a low power grid system, like a lot of people who are off-grid are, and they don't have a whole lot of amps to allow for usage, this allows you to select between 600 watts, 900 watts, or 1300 watts as how much energy you're using. And that can mean the difference between tripping your breaker or not, which is just really, really nice to have. Something to keep an eye out for if you are not in the typical big city type electrical grid system. Especially for more developing countries, that's something that's really appreciated, or actually it seems like we're all developing countries at this point in time. If you get a higher end one, sometimes people will want to tell you, especially if it's a glass top, they want to tell you not to use your cast iron on the glass tops because it can scratch the surface if you're doing this action. this is kind of like some kind of non-stick surface, but at least it's not going into your food. So if this was a glass top, you wouldn't want to be doing something like that. So usually the recommended solution is to go with a enamel steel pot, like this. And this works great on here. You can see it's not really enameled on the bottom, but it's very flat and smooth. This is your classic Le Creuset. The downside of Le Creuset is I found a lot of times they will crack, especially if they get too hot in one spot. If they don't get heated and cooled evenly, the enamel will crack and start to come off. Let's see if I can get you a version of that. This is something my mother had since the 70s. And you can see it's starting to chipped off here, and there's a few other spots where the rust got underneath and chipped off the enamel. Overall, otherwise a very durable product. This particular one, you can see it's fully enameled on the bottom. I will talk about more about the cast iron in an upcoming video, so look out for that. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you on all the details of why induction cooktops are the future, and I would strongly recommend you get one because it's just a much better way to cook than gas or old style electric or any other cooktop I've ever used. So may you be well and eat well. May you feel well. May you be blessed. May you be filled with unconditional love. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.